From a land management perspective, what's the difference between this and this? Hey, I'm Justin Hitt from Prosperity Homestead. Now, I'm not dissing anybody for clear cutting their land, and I'm just making recommendations based on my experience and based on my knowledge in the management of land. Now, I got a permaculture design certification. I've got a lot of years in erosion management, holistic land management, some minor forestry elements. And by all means, though, what I want for the land is to fully express the land itself. I want the best quality timber. I want the best value from the land. Now, this land I'm looking at here is someone else's property, so I'm not going to go out there and walk around. But basically, they clear cut the property. It had below average timber on it. Now, right now with timber prices going crazy in 2022, it was worth cutting for them because they wanted the cash. But from a land management perspective, you might think it's pretty ugly. Now, it leaves behind a lot of brush and a lot of habitat for small animals, but it exposes the soil to sunlight, it messes up the layers of the soil, and it tears up the ground. So there's going to be erosion, there's going to be challenges like that. Now, some people would push all this into a pile and burn it. I talked to the forester who did this work. They don't do it that way. They just let this stuff rot down and later come out with a bulldozer and run over it, or they come out with a forest mulcher and they'll chip it up more. They might grub the stumps out. It really just depends on what the owner wants. When I work with clients, I'm looking for maximum utility value in the shortest period of time with a small or minimal investment. So you can turn woods like this, which has near zero timber value because the density of large trees is too low. Now, it's much lower than the land over on this side, but this side did have some nice trees in it. The underlying factor is those nice trees could have been nicer in 10 years using the forest mulcher to get the underlayer of the woods, which would build up the soil base and give you habitat like this overgrown area here. Now, again, by getting the larger trees to a better prime timber health, you are going to get more money for the land. But again, some owners want money now. And that's why I help clients buy degraded land and use permaculture and ethical and holistic land management in order to improve that land. Now, this forester didn't do a bad job. There's a low area down there that has a creek. He stayed away from it. There are a couple big trees he could have picked out of it, but he didn't. He also asked me before he cut the property line, because I wanted a tree barrier on the property line, and property lines are, there's like a 5 to 10 foot right of way on either side of the property line, depending on your county. So he basically asked me about some of the pines. He took those pines out, and he kind of took every other nice big tree out. So you can see he left the tree with my markers on it, but he took out the trees next to it. So technically it's on the line. He took half the tree. It doesn't matter. Guy was a nice guy. He knew what he's doing. He did a little rough job out here, but again, there wasn't enough quality timber to take your time, so he just basically ripped it. And that's what you got to do to make it economically feasible. Now, if I owned the land, what would I have done? Again, I do the same thing for pretty much every piece of land, unless it's got really prime timber, and I basically will get a trail on the perimeter with a forest mulcher. That way you can do a better survey of the land. And then when you find prime wood, clear the underbrush so that if you got about 5 to 10 more years on it, clear the underbrush. Otherwise, if it's all big trees like this, if you got a high density of these big giant trees, you get a forester to come in and clear it. And then you build roads. That way you can have logging roads that are accessible for hunting and other things. But again, that really depends on the owner. In this case, they needed the money, they wanted the money, but what they've done is stripped off the value of the land itself. See, if I was going to buy this piece of property, it's about 18 acres, I can't pay them as much as I could with land with trees on it, because for what my purposes are, and for what my clients' purposes are, is to run goats and to run pigs. So goats and pigs, starting with the goats, they want this shelter. They want this underbrush. They don't want an open field. You know, pigs can get sunburn. Isn't that amazing? Goats, they don't like the wind. They can get sick in too much wind. So having some tree shelter is going to give us fertilization for the larger trees. It's going to give us a good ground cover that the pigs are going to find acorns and dig stuff up, and the big trees are going to drop more acorns. That's free protein for your hogs. Out here, when you got nothing, then you got to build a bunch of shelters, you got to build a bunch of pens, and you ultimately don't get as much utility out of it. Now again, you got the cash, maybe you're using the cash to build your infrastructure, and you're going to allow trees to grow back, but a big tree like this takes 30 years to get to where it's at. So you don't want to necessarily pull it out. Now you can see a lot of bare dirt out there in the middle of that property. That bare dirt will erode. That dirt will start at the top of the hill, and it'll work its way all the way down to the bottom of the hill. So you're losing soil, which takes hundreds of years to produce, and you're losing fertility because most of the nutrients are water soluble. So in the case of forest mulching or using trails to clear out the land, you're going to have more of the tree biomass still on the property, degrading and feeding the soil. Now again, you might clear cut the land like this if you're going to put in a pasture. Maybe you want to get the pasture in. And you know, again, I'm not pooping on this. I don't know if you notice this, but he's got the tree piles out of the way and kind of clustered. Now a better way of doing it would be to put the tree piles in tight crimps on contour. Basically dig a trench on contour, put the trees in it, or a swale, you know, a little ditch, put the trees in it, crimp them down real tight, use them as erosion control. But again, every forester is going to do it slightly different. There are best practices, but what you're usually going to get is cut and run. You're usually going to get somebody who's going to cut out the trees, take the good stuff, leave behind everything else, because their equipment can drive right over top of this stuff. They don't really care if these piles are here. Now I'm not going to film too much because there's somebody out there sleeping in that car. I think they're doing some work and they just got out here early. But ultimately, I want to show you the difference between clear cutting the land, which makes it difficult to navigate unless you've got good equipment. It causes erosion issues. It has challenges where you've taken all the value out of the land. So if I was going to buy that piece of land, I can't pay them as much as I would if it had trees on it. And I'm going to discount it $1,500 an acre. So if they say they want $3,000 an acre, I'm only going to pay $15 an acre because you got to do work to get this land back straight. In fact, I got to run a forest mulcher over this, or I got to bring heavy equipment out to grub the stumps. Because again, you can't mow over stumps, you can't drive over stumps. You got to get them all out. In the case of forest mulching, it would be too expensive to forest mulch now that the trees are all cut down, because rather than going around trees, he's got to go over top of everything. Getting a bulldozer out, I could grade and contour the land. I could get flat pastures, but all that topsoil I'm going to lose. So what I'd want to do is take all the trees, chip them in a pile, get all the topsoil out, and then put do my grading, do my excavation work, get my paddock straight, and then I got to put all that chipped wood back and all that topsoil back, which I'm losing a lot of nutrients. I'm losing a lot of soil biology. After that, I'd have to come in and lime. I'd have to come in and possibly fertilize, seed it, get it in grass or some kind of pasture blend. But I wouldn't have any trees on my slopes to prevent erosion. So again, if this was an agricultural piece of property, it looks like he done something. It looks like you get a little money in your pocket. But this land probably only got him, net the owner, maybe $800 an acre. So he's going to lose $1,500 an acre if he sells it. Because a lot of times people get land, they inherit it, and then they strip the trees off it, and they sell it. He's going to lose $1,500 an acre to get $800 an acre. His net loss there is what? $700 an acre. So his net gain is, his net loss is $700 an acre. He could have got $1,500 an acre with the trees on it. Because again, you let the trees mature out, and then you have a proper forester come out and cut them, or do a select cut. So again, if you got questions about this kind of thing, there's a lot of depth in this topic. I am certainly not a forestry expert, but I do know some people who are, and they can answer the questions if I can't answer them readily. Also, there are soil and conservation concerns that you want to be aware of. I can't answer questions about that. And clear cutting rarely helps your soil. It usually leaves you a soil that requires a lot of inputs in order to get it to pasture. That's why farmers don't buy wooded land to turn into pasture. In fact, this land that I'm on right now used to be cattle pasture, and it's overgrown probably 10, 15 years, and it's kind of useless. That's why we're able to get it at a good price. That's why we're able to, you know, knowing what we know, get some use out of it. But essentially, we're going to be about $7,000 in before you can even start. Well, you can camp on the site, but it took the first set of trails in order to use the site because the trees were so thick. If you just clear cut it or get a bulldozer out, it feels like you've done something. You may even net some money, but then you're going to put money into it in the future. You're going to have to spend a lot of extra money to get it up to where it needs to be a good high utility piece of land, where with just the trails I can start running goats. See, you can put temporary fencing in the trails and run the goats in the woods, and then you just check on them and keep it up and running all good. Anyway, I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. Ask your questions in the comment. If you have more detailed questions, go visit www.prosperityhomestead.org. Go to the contact page, ask your questions. At Prosperity Homestead, we help landowners get the highest utility value from their land, very often cash flowing land day one, with a real plan built on permaculture, built on holistic land management, designed to stimulate the ecosystem, designed to work with nature, and really get you to that next level. Again, I'm Justin Hitt, and I'll see you in the next video.